been working down in Cornwall now, painting for 6 years in this one particular place called Tregardock Beach. And
sorry, where is that in Cornwall? Just to give us some geography.
Yeah, so basically Tregardock is quite, it's positioned very near a village called Darl-e. It's in the North Cornwall,
yes.
in between Port Isaac and Tintagel.
Mm-hmm.
So it's farming country, it's remote, and it's properly rural in its feel. And so for me, having lived in Oxford a long time and Buckinghamshire before that, it was wholly different from what I knew, really. It's the actual beach itself is quite difficult to get down to, and it's relatively remote. You know, it's set within a cove. The coastal path, you can find it and actually walk past it because it's quite steep to get down. So not everyone, even locally, has been onto this beach or even knows it very well. I basically ended up working there. It was not a sort of premeditated thing at all. I was my wife Mary and I were down in a little village called Tregardock, quite nearby, and a friend had said, you know, we were in Oxford and feeling a bit tired out, and a friend had invited us down to her place for the weekend. So that was our first time down there, and then I basically walked along the coast a few hundred metres and then came to Tregardock, and it was kind of a fairly instant, like, wow, there's something about this place. And obviously today I've bracketed it in the art of place. And Tregardock, and I've had this before, and I think we all connect with this, specific places for specific reasons. And with Tregardock, it was just, there was an intensity on this particular part of the coastline, and a slightly mysterious, I couldn't quite put my finger on as well, but it was definitely intense. Because you stand, and I've actually got a video which you can have a look at after, but as you come down to Tregardock, you stand on the cliffs and then you just can look out on this huge vast swathe of sea, and particularly when you watch the weather coming in towards you. And I think it's partly because it's elevated up, and also it's held within this kind of cove, cliffs going right up behind you as well, so it sort of steps down like this.
It's compelling landscape.
Yeah, you sort of feel held but like utterly exposed as well. So I sort of so I initially found this piece of grass which was already worn down, and I think, you know, some kids and stuff would sometimes make fires on that bit of coastline. So I found this bit of grass and just started painting there, and just drawing, just for a bit of fun. I did a little sketch that weekend, so that was sort of as a start of things. The other thing to say is it's owned by the National Trust, so it's that whole section of the coastline. So I mean, it's well looked after. It's really very beautiful, and I think, yeah, from an artistic point of view, just to give some backdrop to that, I've been doing a lot of drawings of buildings, like classical buildings generally, Oxford, in London and Bath for the three main ones. And I've sort of become a little bit jaded I think I'd done so much of that particular work. I just it was really in me, this need to kind of push away into experimenting again.
That's some departure from topographical painting to this, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I'm sort of unapologetic for the fact that my style's really moved on a lot. I'm kind of like that, but the link really for me in those, when I went down again to Tregardock was the link between the buildings and the cliffs was that with the cliffs, the low sun, you get this, especially in the mornings as it comes over the tops of the cliffs from inland, you get these really deep shadows on the cliffs, and they're quite structural. And I just thought, oh, I could do this. This is a bit like what I've been doing with, like, what I've been drawing. Well, the Colosseum is a good example actually, with crazy dramatic light on it, and St Paul's. So yeah, it was a real. There was a sort of a trigger there, really. And that sort of was enough for me in terms of thinking, oh, I could do some. I'll just come down and just do a few black and white drawings and see how it goes. And then it sort of carried on. And funnily, the black and white departed quite quickly. But I still work with charcoal and pigment, like with my buildings. But I found just being in nature, every day, the house where we were staying, which we were renting just up the road. It was. Sort of from the moment you woke up, you look out and you were seeing nature going on around you. And I think the colour, whilst I was working, even because we were down there in the winter months, the first 2 years we were down there, we went down for 7 months, well, it might be 9 months actually at a time. And the colours in the landscape, even in like December, January, I just thought, wow, I had no sense of this actually. It's so, the burnt colours of the ferns and the blackthorn flowering, you're learning about stuff, and the sort of the blackthorn, you got a sea of like white little flowers going down to Tregardock. So it was all very, it was just interesting, the colour.
But what's quite interesting about what you're saying is that if you were doing buildings before, you were in an urban environment, and suddenly you're in the countryside in this piece.
It's not unusual. I mean, you're a bit of a soulmate with John Virtue. You know John Virtue?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And he's the same.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
The similar step into. Well, he's sort of gone backwards and forwards, hasn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
If you respond like you do, you respond to everything.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, the buildings, you've got the angular marks where you sort of carve up the buildings, and I was taught that sort of in my training, and it's kind of a, standard sort of classical thing where you divide the drawing up as soon as you'll know. So there's a sort of, that worked well with buildings, and then was working quite well with the landscape in Tregardock as well, because it was so sort of struck, all these big rocks on the beach. It was really carve it up kind of thing.
Yeah. Was it more sort of, it required a more fluid response too, in that if you're down at Tregardock, it's not quite so measured and proportioned, in that if you're working on the buildings, you can't say, well, I'll just do that way, when actually it's not, and it would unbalance the composition. I mean, how instinctive is your response? Do you?
Yeah, so the movement aspect of, particularly the sea, was a whole new challenge. I think because this one place had so much there was so much going on and so much new to tackle, like with the weather. Like, I mean, I was just going out, and then, I had no idea how quickly the fronts come in, and then, and you're caught out, for example. So I had to learn all about that really. But with my material, and then how my materials was responding to being out there. So, for example, in the city, I would work on an easel upright. You can't do that. So I would lay a bit, lay paper or board out on the ground, and then just put some rocks on the corners to like nail it down. And yeah, you just sort of feeling your way. But with the materials, I've really developed, you know, I was using dry mediums like pastel and pigment for the buildings, but using wet mediums to get that sense of movement. So I was working out how to capture some of this, but I had to. I guess one thing I was going to say about process is I had to almost, and well, for me, I had to just focus on specific things at specific times, and you know, it was too much really to try and. Well, the place was so intense and quite overwhelming, I think, and I found, you know, working there sometimes was quite exhausting because it's a deluge to the senses, and sometimes when, you know, artists say I've got a bit of artistic block and you're looking for inspiration. Well, I mean, at that time of just starting out, I felt sort of opposite to that, in that it was almost, I had to kind of parcel off what I was doing. So I would actually, as I was walking, I sort of had a sense, I've always liked the sea, I'd like to paint the sea again. I've touched on it before. But I found I was actually, as I was walking down to the sea, getting caught up in, wow, the hedgerows are amazing. or really...
Yeah, because Virtue said as well that colour is a cul-de-sac. You know, if you're bombarded with too much colour, you are going into a cul-de-sac in a way. Whereas and that's what I love about your paintings. They've got a measured palette which isn't too bombarding you with too much colour. Do you know what I mean? Or?
Yeah, I do. I think, it's slightly different for different artists. I definitely, though, am about slowly recording things as I go, and then it's like a kind of chain which is probably endless actually, where I then shift on to. So I'll have so I mean, a classic obvious thing would be, say, the gorse plant, which, if you're not used to it and you see it in a big landscape, it's all, you know, that yellow. So I had this little phase where I was just looking up close with the gorse. And then I was painting that for a month or so, and then I thought, actually, I want to move. It was just like, right, stop, and then I move on, and it was quite, and then you're on the next thing. So I don't really think about what that next thing was at that time. It was more of a...
But as you said, it's a way of not being overwhelmed by the immensity of what you're faced with.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, when you go, you're going down to the beach, do you know what you're going to paint? And when you get there, do you start painting straight away, or do you spend time just looking?
Yeah. That's a good question, because it's been interesting. My process has been, I've basically started just going out, and as I say, getting distracted. And so my plans that I had were nearly always turn into something else. So I think then subconsciously I thought, well, actually this is going out with this big agenda to do X is not working. And then I decided to actually embrace the spontaneous aspect of it. So I would just head out with, I'd have you have to obviously plan a certain amount working environment like that. So I'd work out, certain materials which I think I would need, but even that, invariably, I would get down there and find, I was seeing something of a particular colour and it didn't have that pastel colour, and feeling entirely disproportionately frustrated that the whole day was wasted.
Did you find yourself writing yellow ochre?
Yeah, well, funnily, the yellow ochre you mentioned, I had that one time, and I actually started using some clay mud in the ground to remedy, and that's a good example of what it was like. Just sort of, you know, use your intuition, but some increasingly I was using things I found down in the landscape as well. There were a better example maybe was, and again this is a disproportionate sort of enjoyment, but I'd been taking some little bottles of water down to mix with these soft pastels to then put them on the paper, and then I noticed one day, there's this stream that I'm working right nearby, so I just started using the spring water, and then I just thought, this feels so good to have this element and be working like this. I mean, it's not a particularly crazy thing, but it just, I guess it shows in terms of a place and how we connect to it. There's all this physical element of just putting your hand, you know, putting your hand in the water and feeling it, actually touching, and then taking that further, actually touching the subject matter that you're drawing, you know, its texture on the beach, then feeling the sand, and I'd take sand and other twigs and bits of debris back with me up to the house and just have it out, because it was sort of part of this language I was developing really.
Connecting into the landscape, really, wasn't it? And
yeah, it really was, yeah.
I can hear that in your voice, actually.
And the landscape
Right.
ending up in the picture, literally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can't really, the sort of that feeling which you carry in your body of the place, I've never had it in the way that I've had it in Tregardock before. I think in Oxford, in a different way, I've enjoyed exploring and, you know, going out early in the morning and the fresh air and the spires is a sort of magic with Oxford. But at Tregardock, but I just then draw away, and you still feel it, that sort of the majesty of the buildings, and want to put that into the work. But with Tregardock, it's like there was this visceral energy, and obviously you know when you go away and you're in quite a wild place, you feel, you know, that you feel a certain energy, and you can feel a bit euphoric with all the fresh air and everything. But this was a bit different. So it was after about 6 months that I was working down there. I noticed that my way of applying some of the materials, I felt a kind of energy going through my body. And what it did was, when I started using some oil paint, I would kind of almost hit the board with the brush. So, you know, I'd have, actually this is quite good. These are quite good examples. So I'd have a bigger brush than this, but I felt the need just to express the sea with this quite, you know, vigorous movement, and it was like, and in a way that was, I was thinking, what am I doing here?
Did you feel you were sort of channeling it through? Yeah. It was going in here and actually rushing through and coming out like that. Was there an element of that you were responding so?
Yeah, I think so, because it was like a lot of things. At the time I was like a bit bewildered by just what I was doing. But then obviously later on you process it a bit and think, oh, okay, I'm starting to understand what this is about now. Well, yeah, I had one time where I'd been down there for quite a few months, and I came back to Oxford, and I'd been here for two weeks. Thank you. Yeah, that's all right. I'd been back here for 2 weeks, and I went drawing with my friend Kieran, out in the middle of the Cotswolds, and it was very relaxed and nice, just serene environment. And after about 5 minutes, I just whacked out this. I'd sort of been quite aggressively working on this very relaxed environment, and he came over and what on earth? Yeah, what's happened? And I said, honestly, I don't know, but I did know. It was like I still had that energy going on in me, and
because of the human condition, though, do you get a paradoxical backlash to it? So sometimes.
And then feel very lack of energy.
Yeah.
Well, when I'm talking about that energy in a sort of general sense of being down in Cornwall for a lengthy time, no, I find actually my mood is
excellent.
It's a positive energy. I think though the other side of it is I'm very aware if I'm working outside, and Cornwall's good for this. I've got to relax hard out of the other side of painting. That's a whole another thing really. But I do think actually, I find personally working outside mentally is invigorating in just a positive way, just full stop really. And I think that's partly why in my practice I sort of want to encourage it for other people, young people, whatever, because
but that's so expressed in your painting. I mean, the confidence with which you do it. You obviously feel very connected and content with your subject. I mean, this is a very confident painting.
Yeah, I think it is done confidently. I guess it's partly because I've been in this position where I'm immersed in it. So I'm not really analysing too much.
Flow.
I'm not really analysing how confident it is.
No, I know you're not.
But what I am conscious of is that I'm just getting on with it.
Yes.
And I'm not the analytical part of the brain, which many artists can at different times struggle with over-analysing a piece. I don't really. There's no room. I don't give any room for that really. I just.
Well, I can assure you, as the observer of your work, I look at it and I see great confidence, which tells me that you are at one with your subject.
Right. Yeah.
That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
And that's and that's what this connectivity that you've spoken about, this rush of feeling.
Yeah.
I am not an artist. All I can say is that, to me, any of the arts is a spiritual experience. It's like, you listen to music, you can burst into tears, or you look at a painting and it's fabulous. Yeah. And that's what I'm hearing you saying to me, that this is 6 years you've been doing this, and you love where you are, and it's really evident. I think.
They are quite musical as well, aren't they? I get a sense of music from them.
Yeah, this one over there.
Yeah.
It looks to me like you do know what you're doing when you're doing it. From the wild one like that to the sort of more blocky ones, I can see intentionality in it, if you see what I mean. But it's like there's the relationship between you and what's happening. And that's always a dynamic thing, because...
On that, I guess as I'm working, there are things which feel good. It's as simple as that. So if something feels good, I've very consciously thought, that feels good, I carry on with it. So working with wax, it felt good. There was different things going on for me with all this burning things and sketching with match ends, but it felt good, so I carried on with it. And then later on, it sort of clarifies in a way. So I guess what you're saying about knowing what you're doing well, really, at the point of doing some of the pictures, I felt like I had no idea what I was doing. But as time's gone on, and 6 years in, particularly work which was done, say, a year or more ago, yeah, I get what was going on in it, and I think it's like your brain's catching up with the elements of what you're experiencing, you know.
I feel somewhere that intense because I've been there and had that same understanding. It's like being punched in the chest when it's so overwhelmingly powerful. And my own experience of working, not there at all, but sort of like in a landscape, is that you end up, I know the hackneyed word flow, but where my very reason for being there is what I'm doing, it's there, and it's completely dictating, and I lose all sense of self-consciousness. Consciousness? Yes. And I just respond. It's like the conduit between me and what's in front of me.
Yeah.
Enables me to just completely forget everything. And although I don't whack the paper, there is just that lovely feeling that something in me knows how to respond.
Instinctively.
I actually think, fuck it, this is what I'm doing.
Completely.
Yes.
So when you're talking about that, I'm just sort of thinking, yep.
But I think a good painting evokes other senses, so you can feel it, you know, and you can hear the sound of the sea and everything. So that's so it's like synesthesia, isn't it? You can.
Yeah.
So
Your reference to music, I do relate the movement of the brushes as like a kind of dance of. So there is that.
And my husband, who plays jazz, he's a double bassist, and he went up to that one. I think he talked to you about it. He saw that as things happening and developing, and then a space, and then things which you don't actually know because you're just working and responding. And he talks about it quite a lot afterwards. And, and that would be not synesthesia, not actually, but to do with the sort of little experimental marks and then a space and then more.
Yeah.
So you're just the Jackson Pollock thing of plotting the movement of the artist across the picture. Yeah. And that's what sort of we're watching your experience.
When you put a painting out into it, then you're evoking all sorts of, it's not yours anymore in a sense, is it? No. It's everyone's. Yeah. And how they respond to it.
And you're on your own, as a painter, you're just on your own little journey really, and working it all out. But of course, all sorts of
How much
things.
do you go back? Do you work in the studio when you get home? Do you do stuff and then change it, or take it further, or whatever?
So this piece was unusual, and pretty much all of it was done on the beach. Well, I say it's unusual for a big piece. That's unusual because I usually am touching up quite a lot on a big piece back at the studio. The smaller ones I sort of like the freshness of them, of just what I've done down there, and it's a weird thing. I mean, as a painter, I guess sometimes I think it's a funny old thing that I've chosen to do for my work. But there are little moments where I sort of think, oh, maybe, I can do this. For short periods, you think, oh, I can do this. But when you're looking at a picture and is it finished? When I'm doing these Tregardock works, sometimes I'll go back to the studio and it's just, that rock needs to move slightly to the right, or I need to just make a mark here, and then the painting feels balanced and finished.
And you just put it up and just look and think and look and think.
Yeah, I think very indebted to this couple down in Cornwall who've allowed us to rent their place, because there's different rooms where I can leave work, and I've sort of found, I've learned myself that from myself that I can, I'll go and have some breakfast in the morning. If I've got work in different rooms, I just have a little wander through. I can have a look at something and leave it, and then there were some days where you know, I'd get straight up in the morning and straight away it was in my head, I need to go to that piece and just do something to it. It's bugging me.
So your subconscious
yeah,
yeah.
and I haven't really had, that is completely a luxury, I think, because I've never really had that sort of space to do that. I'm more often kind of sort of trying to hide my work away under a sofa or something. But which is why it's nice having a show.
How do you get up from the green patch of grass back up to the village with things that big? I mean,
I
do
was
you
going to
walk
ask
along
that. How do you
those?
get all your bits down there? I mean, it's...
Yeah, so I just have a rucksack. Partly the reason why there's the small work is I could just carry it onto my arm, and for practical reasons it was easier. But then I knew I'd have to go big. It's sort of, I like working big, and I was trying to work out, well, could I just do the work in the studio with all these studies around me and use them, as a lot of artists do, but it just wasn't working at all for me, and I knew I needed to be down there, because I couldn't paint, wasn't painting in the same way, it didn't have the energy, or the same energy. I still was able to, but it just wasn't the same. So yeah, I mean, it's not very poetic or anything. I literally dragged the canvases up the hill, and it's quite a tight pathway, and sometimes, you know,
So part of it is left on the
they
hedge.
get attacked.
Part of the hedge ends up in it.
it.
That's all part of the work.
You need a Sherpa.
Yeah, in a way, I think other times I was more, if it, like, oh God, I got so far, and then right at the last, a bush gets in the way or something, but yeah. So yeah, I haven't got a brilliant system of kind of that's slick to do the work, but then I guess, I mean, you can see with the paints here, I mean, I'll take this down sometimes to the beach.
Which certainly isn't slick.
No, and I think just my way of working, I get so into it in the moment. I'm not very conventional, I guess. So, like, for example, my oil paints, I don't have them all lined out around the palette. So it gets messy when I'm working, and well, sometimes with these large tubes of paint, I'm in such a hurry to get something down on the page that I'll actually use it straight from the tube. I was going to say these oil bars as well are quite good, because it's like a directness that's going straight on, which I quite enjoy.
Because this picture that we're looking at, that we're talking about, these are inclement conditions. I mean, this is not a sunny day. So I'm looking at, you're sitting there with all your paint out. This is wind coming at you, this is rain, this is the energy that I'm seeing. Yeah. And you're sat there facing this lot, so you must be wet, your oils must be wet, your hands must be wet.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to paint any sort of picture in Woodstock of how crazy it all is.
Yeah.
But I think, like this, I find a little area of rocks where I get a little bit of shells down, and then I lean it up against the rock and work. And then with my palette, sort of oils on the sand gets into the paint. I quite like with some of it's quite fun with some of the smaller, and bigger work like that, just letting sometimes the wax and paint and ink all just is running everywhere.
Oh, that's interesting. So the conditions can sometimes dictate the end of the painting. So is that what am I understanding you correctly?
Yeah, the conditions definitely play a part. So you can see in that one right in the centre of the picture, some of the oil paint's running upwards,
Yeah.
actually in the
Yes.
top right as well.
Yes.
And I mean, I hadn't orchestrated that, but I quite like it when I got back to the house. I thought,
So
well,
carrying them back must be quite cute then, and not smudging or... I heard you
Um,
Is that
wet?
wet? Yes.
yeah, because working with oils, I felt I wanted to. Oils really, I've sort of got such a love for now. I can't really, there's something that they do which is so kind of, well, people who like oils just kind of use your hands with it. There's something so juicy and brilliant about and versatile about them. But the butt is outside. They are hugely messy. But yeah, I kind of just have to. I've just felt that I've got to roll with that. This one you're mentioning though. Yeah, it's quite in pastel, obviously, quite thick paint, and so. But underneath all this, there's wax and bits of, odds and ends that you find on the beach. I actually, underneath these layers, I was actually, I'd sometimes use seaweed just to, and drag it across the painting, just to create a sort of a sense of the movement, just to keep that feeling of. So that, yeah, I mentioned that partly because it's sort of, you have to take risks basically, but.
Do you melt the wax or do you use it just as a resistant sometimes as well? Or do you
Both.
mix it with the colour or?
I usually, well, this one here, you can, I would tend to, well, I was actually thinking before doing this talk, well, what's my connection point talking to you guys, where I can sort of mentally get into the space of Tregardock, and it's kind of the burnt matches. It's funny, because by doing that, and I think this is a sort of, there's a spiritual aspect to this, the burning, where it's grounding me, and I'm kind of sketching out as the first thing I do on the paper, and then melting the wax, so it creates this kind
Do
of.
you use charcoal for sketching out?
So I use the end of the match.
Just the match?
Yeah. Charcoal as well.
I thought, yes, just charcoal.
And what sort of wax is it then? Is it like candle stripping?
It's household. I've tried more expensive like beeswax and things, but the cheaper wax actually melts quicker. So it was kind of doing more interesting things. But yeah, but just by melting the wax and then having something on the paper, I would then immediately sort of be able to work into it. So as I went on, I was doing the oils, it just goes over the wax wonderfully, and it's quite satisfying.
Is there a fear that in 300 years' time, that all your paintings are going to sort of suddenly crumble and fall off the wall because you've got whatever wax over? Or actually do you not concern yourself that at all?
No, I'm completely conscious of that, and I'm quite a stickler with materials. I mean, the wax that I mentioned there is an unusual thing for me because I'm always, the boards I work on, archival, and the oil paints are the best, the top really expensive ones, and that's partly because I think when you're painting in nature and you see the intensity of colours that you see, I don't want that to.
Do you know what, I think
lose
that's
that.
our downfall as humans, our obsession with permanence. That's what's
Well,
going to knock us into...
Yeah, in a way, but because I have.
In the 300 years.
I was
Let the people I know what you mean though.
But you,
But it's something people care about so much.
No,
It's
and
Yeah.
it's a ridiculous thing to care about.
But if you have a beautiful painting which you want to keep, I'm not saying this is what I think at all,
No.
but
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's fine. I think you have. I think I feel a responsibility to just be a bit careful,
Yeah.
to be careful with all that. So the paper is a specific paper which has been sized, so when the oil goes on, it doesn't. So I mean, it's a mixture of things. You want, with the light on that picture, actually, I was quite pleased with it because the oil is really jumping off the paper, and if it wasn't sized, it would soak through and go very matte, and then crumple up and drop off the wall after several hundred years. But that could be quite an interesting process.
I wanted to ask about your choice of surface, because you've got board for some, paper for others.
Yeah, so paper generally has been for pastel work and drawing,
Right.
just generally, and then the boards generally for oils. But I would say I enjoy working on the boards most because they're rigid and they can take a buffeting, and they do. So
Yeah, I'm thinking from a practical as well as an artistic point of
Yeah,
view.
yeah.
So that one there, was that painted on the beach?
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
so
that was on the cliff. Yeah.
So that would
down.
be harder. I think just be harder to get your paper to keep still, wouldn't it? If nothing else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this paper is quite robust.
Okay.
How heavy is it?
400 gram. Yeah, it's
And carrying it back would
Fabriano.
be harder than a board, I would have thought, in a way, because it could flap against itself.
Yeah. I mean, it's all the work is sort of this experimenting, trial and error.
So when you have like a pastel day or an oil day, you won't take everything down. You'll decide beforehand.
I'll usually. I started off trying to take a whole load, so I had choices, and it just wasn't working. I was so exhausted by the time I got down there. So I take the essentials really, and that's what led me into then kind of ad-libbing a little bit with what I'm doing.
I was
All
aware
these questions.
there's some of the works right down at the end of the gallery they appear to be much more abstract.
Yeah.
Are they the latest ones you've done?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
So
so
you
I
feel
did have
yourself
some
moving
notes here.
forward?
I was going to, and there was something I'd written about, well, basically, about how different this show is to the last one, but there's this, well, some of the pieces are quite strongly abstract, so I'm sort of, in a way, the process has been, I collate all this information, I'm kind of going like from one step to another, and then I'm sort of naturally pulling away slightly and looking at it in a slightly bigger, like the feeling of the place as a whole. I don't know, it's a gentle sort of move, feeling the place as a whole, and as I do that, there's some particular aspects which are staying with me. So, and these are quite abstract ideas in themselves, which feed into the abstract work. So, as an example, sometimes it's just things I enjoy, but I quite like flat light generally. On paintings, I like flat areas of colour, and like exploring how that colour, you can almost step into it, but how it makes you feel. The abstract paintings I'm doing, so they are still for me, have a fairly strong element of representation in that I'm looking at the colours in the landscape, and then but I am also in the abstract ones going from using memory as well within them. So they're not all in the spot doing it. They're sometimes painted up back up at the house, which has sort of views to the coastline, but isn't right in the thick of this, like the maelstrom of things. So they're going. So I guess because of that, they're a bit more serene in a way, and so there's more emphasis just on the colour, shapes, and as I'm working in the landscape, something I often talk to people about is how, this is the excitement of being outside in nature so much, because whether you're an artist or not, the way you see will change over time. And I guess because I'm doing it almost, I've got a specific reason with the painting to be looking and looking. I'm finding that I naturally, and the same happens with buildings as well, I naturally start pulling apart the elements of what I'm looking at. That's sort of one stage, and then that then takes me towards abstracting the form more. So with the abstract paintings, I'm really painting. The detail is like of less interest to, has become of less interest to me, and the bigger shapes and the shapes of what I'm seeing are what's sort of feeling. So they're not strong horizontals, looking out to see are really have really stayed with me more than the gorse or the plants and things. And I think all of that is also I'm quite enjoying now exploring that territory of colour and shape. And one thing I wanted to say actually, was before I sort of stop talking, I talked a lot, but the difficult aspects of, so the things when you're working or when you see things that actually, or you paint them, and there's a tension with them, and so I'll have moments where I like the way something looks, but I'm thinking, well, it's not. I don't understand quite why that's working in the way it is. And the abstracts would be a bit like that sometimes.
They're a bit more visceral. Instinctive?
Yeah, instinctive probably would be more the word I'd use, yeah. So I had these two abstracts on the wall I'm sort of looking at as I talk, because I guess they, I've had like impressions of cloud shapes which have sort of just stayed with me over time, and one of them was this sort of long, thin, sort of sausage-shaped cloud, but it just kept stuck in my mind, and I applied the cloud in this same dramatic
stroke.
So it's like two brush strokes really that form that cloud. So it's quite unusual way of painting for me, but I like that it's still recording an element of something which.
But funnily enough, I can see that in there. I can see where the progression's gone. I mean, it is okay. You're using the same colours, but the shapes in there they are in there also.
Yeah, no, I'm glad.
Yeah,
I'm glad you're
are.
seeing that. Yeah.
Yes, I can see how you've evolved and gone maybe more that way.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a more obvious question? It's more pertinent to just how I see people progress. You obviously are very. No, maybe I shouldn't say that. But I was going to say you obviously are very comfortable with where you are with your work. How do you see yourself evolving from here? Where would you like to go? Or are you so free you just stay in the moment and you've got no future plans to... you've made such a move from what I call topographical art to what you're doing now.
Gosh,
the answer can be no.
I'm just thinking about it. I think because there's a slightly compulsive aspect to doing the painting, where I feel this just feels really good, and I guess in life, art is the life is the art. It's also intertwined, isn't it? So, what I was going to say.
But you can tell you're very much in the moment, the way you're responding to our questions, because you've been effortless in the way that when we've interrupted your flow, you've just gone with us, and it's fantastic. So you can see that then.
Oh, entirely. No, entirely. That's why I said to you, the confidence, of course you're going to be reticent about your own work. Whatever we do in life, whether we cook a meal or whatever it is, we're always slightly apologetic about what we're doing. But the confidence in your work as an observer is amazing. I mean, I can really feel all the elements behind that painting, and that can only come from someone who's completely at one with what they're doing at that time. So you obviously you're very deeply rooted in where you were and where you've gone on to maybe with your painting, and I just wanted to explore whether you feel that you want to move on to something else, or there's something else there that interests you.
I think when I mentioned the art and life thing, I think I have felt in embarking on this work in Cornwall, you've just got to go for life. Yeah. And I felt I was a little bit stagnating in what I was doing, and then that was affecting me just in myself as well. I wasn't feeling so positive about things. And one thing I would say, I don't know fully in terms of where I'm going from here with it, but what I would say is when you've spent like a fairly concerted period of time out in nature, it changes you, and
It's interesting.
It's sort of, and that's quite a deep thing, and can be really profound, I think.
But that is in your language. It isn't. It's come up again and again how much you've enjoyed being sort of outside and doing this work, and I do think that it made a change in you from what you've said.
Yeah, I think so. But I think there's different things coming from different places, because in some senses when you're doing your painting, there's a vulnerability to it. Like I'm sitting here with all this work around me, but then it's also given me a certain more robustness in a sense, just by the fact that I feel I've taken a risk with doing all this, and I'm pleased I've done that. I have absolutely.
You must be proud of yourself.
I wouldn't say it like that, but I know you would. I'm glad I've.
Yes.
I'm glad
you've taken that departure.
Gone for it, and I think, if you're implying it into sort of your life and what you're doing, and getting older, and and the state of the world and all existential stuff, then it's important on a basic level. There's all that, but it's important on just a basic level to follow what you without being cliche, your dreams, your things that make you feel good.
Just a general question. Do you still think it's easier to be a male artist than a female artist? Because you can be perhaps more single-minded, and there are more... Because Mary paints as well, doesn't she? I mean, how does she... And it's interesting that you're a couple who paint together, but... I don't know, they still say that it's harder to make it as...
a female artist?
Yeah. Or perhaps it is changing, I don't know.
I think there's a lot of good things have
Yeah.
been going on in that arena with, it's crazy when you look back in time, just how little voice has been given to, in terms of, where you say the Impressionists, there was some very good Impressionist women artists.
What was it, the Gombrick's Story of Art had got one picture by a woman, and I can't remember, I now can't even remember who she was.
No,
Mary Cassatt.
Mary Cassatt, and then the other one who's just had the exhibition in, was it Dulwich Picture House? I can't remember her name, but she was married to a Manet, and she was from
Bertha Morrison.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
it's not exactly.
But women are just generally stepping up. I mean, we have just got to acknowledge this throughout the
Sort of
world.
happening all
Women
over,
are just generally stepping up. It's a slow process, but
Well, but I just admire your mentality. You can be, perhaps men in general can be
A
more
bloody
single-minded.
mindedness.
Single-minded rather than perhaps sometimes. Or is that a generalisation? I don't know.
Yeah, I think I know artists, women artists, friends of mine, who I as so single, I think it's the love of the thing, isn't it?
It often is family, isn't it? Yeah, family is.
because you come over as quite sensitive and slightly
Yeah.
reticent. You really do. There is not
God,
the
I bet
alpha
you're
male
jealous.
sitting in front of us. I'm sure you can
No,
be
no.
that. No, you are quite.
Yeah, I like a bit of football, but
Yeah, no, I'm
No,
sure you do.
that's it.
No, I'm sure you do. But
Yeah.
there is that, and I'm wondering now, through just listening to you for this last hour, or however long we've sat here, maybe I'm seeing that sensitivity also in your work, and good it should be there. In all honesty, if that is, I'm not saying that's definitely what's there. It's just maybe what I'm seeing as a human being. But good if the female side of you can be shown in your work as well. I'm all for that.
Yeah, well, that thing of place and connection
Yeah.
is about, and in yourself feeling we're all made up of so many different parts, aren't we? So it's,
Yes.
it is connecting with. There's something that feels really good for me. I mean, I see the farmers working the land down in Cornwall, and there's something about that which I find really inspiring. And so with my painting, it's felt like, gosh, there's this massive physicality to it in getting down there, in putting your body into the work. Actually, you've got to get fit. You've got to be able to, in order to hold a paintbrush and actually like this. Sounds funny, but I think it mentally it requires a lot of strength to just get in there and put that on, and that's been good for me.
Yeah.
It's been a good challenge because I'm not like big sort of muscular, and but I like that dimension of things. It's sort of healthy,
Yes.
to have a bit of physical labour, all of us, isn't it? It's kind of good.
It's a feeling you made yourself a stronger person by working in that style, in that place, that you've actually raised your sense of self in relation to the farmers working on the land and things like that. Do you feel a slightly more, I'm really can't think of the right words, but it's...
I think I'm just...
You're no longer doing this incredibly effete ink work in Oxford, you're suddenly out there. That's obviously a change.
Oh yes, that's quite interesting actually.
Yeah, it's
In
just
the
like
animals,
I love community, and I think just being around different types of people, I love it. So I like talking to locals down there and just hearing their stories, the stories. And of course, we all need that. It brings things out in you.
Yeah.
And so the farmers, as an example, it just brings something out, which I find really, I have loads of respect for. And I don't think I even, I think for my part in what I'm doing, I'm not, I'm just not even touching on the sort of labour and physicality that they have. But it's you get a little sense of it. So
Yes,
that's kind of cool. That's
And you're out there in the
that's as
land.
much as I can contain, I think. Yes.
And this farmer's
Yeah.
relationship with the land and with the place and the weather will be taking what you're experiencing to another level, won't it? Because it will be for generations.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And then, you know, so your attachment to place. So I sort of feel, for reasonable sort of authenticity in terms of, I'm painting Tregardock now and I feel like I know the place reasonably well, but you know, I could go for a walk down the lane and meet a chap who's been there going down there for 80 years and knows his attachment is obviously much deeper. So it's, at some point there's a cut-off for me painting it, and I will move on to, going back to your question, I'll move on to something else I know.
Okay.
Do you exhibit on there as well? Do you have a
I have,
gallery?
yeah.
How's the reaction been, may I ask, to your work there?
I think it's been good. I think it's early days, really. I mean, what I do like and hold very dear is people who live very close to Tregardock and do know it very well and go down there a lot, who see something in my work, which, I mean, that's obviously nice. That goes back to what I was saying, really. I am just finding my way, and there's these people who, you know, have lived and breathed it through their life. So you completely, that keeps you very humble. There's loads of reasons, you know, that thing about self and, I don't know, maybe a little bit you feel good for doing a challenge, but every aspect of painting down there is humbling because of the struggle, and you don't see the struggle in the show. It's like that painting's a fight with the elements, essentially. And I have done dozens and dozens of pictures which have messed up and not come to anything. So and they don't appear in the show. It's the same for most artists, probably. So you certainly don't get carried away with the work, I don't think. It's quite a plod. It's a slow plod.
I was listening to an artist yesterday, actually, and she said that she talked about the bits that got shoved around. She said she has a shit pile. and friends come through and look at her shit pile and take them home, and then suddenly they're on their walls. You know. She's going, oh, why did that end up in the shit pile? It's marvellous.
I go say, if you've got a big shit pile, as you call it, you're probably actually a pretty good artist, because
this particular woman was actually.
Yeah.
It was amazing. But
I went to a great exhibition called Shit London, which was fabulous. All the shitty aspects of London. You know, so.
I think I heard Kurt Jackson talk about getting fed up with people rummaging through his wheelie bins.
Yeah.
Can I just ask, going back a bit to what you were saying earlier about that effect that being in that place for 6-7 months had on you, when you now go back there, do you switch straight into it? Does it take a little while to get back into it?
Sometimes it's instant, it's not the same every time.
Okay.
I think sometimes I feel just almost desperate to get down there, and I will literally park the car and when unpack my bags and I'm shooting off down there. Other times, I've actually just taken quite an adjustment because it's so another world. And you've got you sort of have to relax into it a bit, really, slow down, and all the distractions. So it's a mixture.
how long have you got the cottage for? How long is this possibly going to go on for you?
I don't know. I mean, the couple we rent it from go away every year teaching. But I think there are other places I've drawn from down there as well. There's a little place on Tregardock Farm which I like, which looks out straight into the ocean. It's just a kind of shed really on stilts.
Oh, Mel.
And that in a way that is actually my ideal, because you really are waking up and going to sleep, you know, seeing the sunset.
So I went
Yeah.
to the Scilly Isles a few years ago, and
Oh, nice.
there's an
Yeah.
artist there who now has his gallery. It's just round from Hell Bay, actually, and
Right.
it's in an old boat shed, and he's opened up the end of the boat shed, and he just looks out to sea.
Okay.
And it's extraordinary. It's
Yeah.
just an extraordinary place for him to work, be creative. And
Yeah,
it sounds a bit like, well, your place on stilts, you know.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, then it's like, I mean, you say about things being immersive, but then there's levels of it, isn't there? And I mean, if you're just living,
I'm not sure
I
if
mean,
it counts if you've got a piece of glass between
no,
and if
sorry.
you're dry.
I mean, I haven't lived in the cave on the beach. I mean, maybe that's the next step.
Oh.
But yeah. Thank you all for
Well,
all your
yeah.
brilliant questions.
Thank you.
Great. You're like,
Thank you.
oh,
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.